Let's take a look at some information and charts on Stellar for BraveNewCoin. And because Stellar and Ripple are so inexorably linked, really based on correlations in price, any news affecting Ripple on the SEC side of things in their lawsuit will likely affect Stellar fairly or unfairly price-wise. So keep that in mind. If you're a Stellar maxi, it's definitely worth paying attention to the Ripple news. The Stellar versus Ripple chart is basically flat over the past 5 years, 6 years, sideways. And correlations are at 86% on the 180-day rolling. So correlations are extremely high between the two. So just keep that in mind. Now, Stellar's probably doing more stuff and things than Ripple is as far as like developing. To me, Ripple is all about remittances and corridors and bank-to-bank transfers and disrupting older fintech stuff, I guess. Whereas to me, Stellar's also that, but maybe more people-friendly than bank-friendly, business-friendly. They have a lot more stuff you can do, at least visibly, that I can find and see relative to Ripple. But both networks are very similar. Ripple has a slightly different consensus algorithm than Stellar. Stellar has half the amount of circulating supply that Stellar does, or total supply that Stellar does. Ripple does. I keep mixing up the two. They're very similar. Jed McCaleb was the founder of both, or co-founder of both. He's still cashing in his chips from Ripple lawsuit, so he's a bajillionaire for life at this point. But they're both very similar. You could say they're brother and sister, cousins, something like that. Lots of stuff happening in the Stellar ecosystem relative to Ripple. Various wallets and custodians and services and some stablecoin stuff happening as well at the USDC side of things. Looks like they have a CNY stablecoin as well. So they're doing stuff, I guess. I don't hear too much about Stellar on any given day. They have a MetaMask equivalent by the looks of it called Freighter. And they also have a DEX of sorts. I don't know what most of these are, these pairs, as far as the coins themselves, but they're all denominated in Stellar for the most part. They have a few others, USDT, ETH, probably some of the bigger things people ask for, but most of these are Stellar denominated, which is what you'd expect. If it's an EOS exchange, it's going to be denominated in EOS. They have some Chinese yuan stuff as well. So interesting things happening on the Stellar side of things, more visible than I can tell on the Ripple side of things. And for the most part, they haven't had any major issues. They claim they're decentralized, but anytime they have errors in the network, they have to come in and correct those themselves. This thing, Ripple's argument as well is that this thing will run without us, right? Well, I don't think that'd be the case. If nobody was here but computers, I'm not so sure Ripple and Stellar wouldn't just eventually cease to exist if they're not being maintained by the companies Ripple and Stellar, right? Now they also have 23 billion circulating, 26 billion non-circulating, held by the Stellar Development Foundation. And like I said, they burned 50 billion of the total supply, basically because they couldn't give it away fast enough through various airdrops and things, which is good. It's good for them to say, hey, we probably minted too much of this stuff. We're just, instead of slowly dripping it into the market continuously, we're gonna just burn it. So the optics on that are much better than selling it on your community members, your fellow community members. Asset holders continues to creep up over time based on Stellar Expert, the website, and circulating supply slowly creeping up over time as well. I'm guessing this is SDF, either selling to market every month. I'm not exactly sure what if they do quarterly reports or monthly reports or what that's all about, but it looks like they've been selling a little bit more than usual over the past 9 months. Probably nothing crazy, but on a notional basis, it's probably significant. Multiple millions, if I had to guess. You'd have to calculate it here, but they're doing their part to keep the price down. If we look at transaction counts, basically at all-time highs. You don't really see this too often with a price chart looking the way Stellar does and transaction counts on-chain activity looking the way it does. This is probably mostly related to DEX activity or swap activity or, all the various things that are going on. Again, I don't hear too much about anything individually with Stellar on-chain wise, but there's something going on here that wasn't here before, right? So the network's a bit different than it was pre-2020 and even pre-2021. Things are different. Average transaction values still down significantly and continue to creep lower. So this is probably microtransactions that are happening to keep this average value down. And you're not really seeing an uptick in Stellar price yet. NVT was near all-time lows. This was when they burned all those Stellar, so you're going to get a value that's falsely low based on that. But this looked organic, at least. This wasn't them burning a bunch of stuff to move on chain, affecting a value. This was stuff moving on chain. This is legitimate organic economic activity, you could argue. Active addresses flat since 2019. Nothing really crazy there at 59,000. So not too bullish on active addresses, but transaction counts basically back to all-time highs. MVRV, which for most coins caps out at around 2x multiple of market cap versus on-chain activity. For Stellar, it hasn't quite ever got past 1. So maybe this is the cycle where it gets 2x greater. I don't know, but when it gets close to 1, it's worth seeing what price looks like. It's currently sitting at 0.5. So I just keep an eye on that. It doesn't look overbought, oversold. It's just neutral right now. Overbought would be like sub 0.2 by the looks of it. In the bear market, this is like sub 0.2. In the bull market, since 2018, it gets to about 1.8. It's loose, but there's a signal there. This thing spikes up pretty decently when it's time to pull back, when it's all speculation and not necessarily foundational on-chain activity. Google trends for Stellar, the protocol, the past 5 years worldwide are flat and sort of, not exciting. Nothing really happening since December to perk this thing back up that I hear about anyway. So if this price does pick up in a big way, I'd look to Google Trends. What's going on? Is it really just speculation? Look to MVRV. Is MVRV spiking with it? Because if you've seen a spike in MVRV and you don't see a spike in Google Trends, that probably is purely speculative. No new money is coming in. No people are searching for Stellar or trading it, whatever. But if you see a rise in Google Trends with a rise in MVRV, that makes a little more sense to me. That's a little more bullish. More new people coming in anyway. They also have a investment trust on Grayscale, one of the smaller ones at 25 million, and they're also in the Bitwise 10 here at 0.54% of the total weighting. It's funny, the Bitwise 10 backtesting is, it's somewhere here. Where'd it go? Anyway, it outperforms Bitcoin alone, so it makes sense to, if you're just an agnostic market participant, it makes sense to get involved into something like this. But it's funny that 6 of these have less than 1% total weighting. It's just, at some point, it's just like, why bother, But it's worked out for them, so why change that? Moving on to technicals, we have the 1-year MA and the MA multiplier in the red here, midline in the white. How this generally works is the buy zone is below that MA, and then the multiplier is the sell zone. Sometimes it's to the penny very quickly, 1 day, that's all you get. Sometimes it's multiple weeks, multiple months above that sell zone. You kind of have to gauge the market, gauge the coin, how much history does it have, how much trust you have in this. So it was basically the top in early 2021, and it actually hit the buy zone very recently. Currently the sell zone's at $1.50. That's going to move up slowly over time if this thing continues to move up. But it's definitely at this point closer to the buy zone than it was, to the sell zone, or is to the sell zone. Just something to watch, longer time frame scale. It's definitely not in a bear market per se, like it had been in 2016, 2017, or even 2019. For me, this probably is a decent shot with everything else of just mega mooning Q4. Like if we're really going to do this thing, the alts with very little fundamental reason to move are going to move anyway. And if they do, I'd look to stuff like this that's showing potentially a 4x from here plus, right? Definitely watch MVRV if you're trading this actively. That's what I'd be doing for any like crazy overbought signals, but it looks good. I mean, bull cross on the 5200 soon. This is another flag type pattern here on the daily. And definitely like all-time high retest at this point, along with everything else. Everything else looks bullish. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Rising tide raises all boats. That sort of thing. RSI has reset a couple times now, not overbought at all yet, more neutral than anything. And I would just watch for just continuous bear divs, which is what we had in December to May. Every higher high had a lower RSI. Maybe not this one here, but for the most part, there was just a downtrend in momentum. So you don't want to see a downtrend in momentum as price is rising. And you don't want to see RSI at infinity like it was on AVAX this past week at like 96 plus. But it can cruise at overbought for a while. I did a video on RSI this week. You can check that out if you want a more detailed explainer of that process. But this looks fine for me. For up on the chart, on the daily cloud, it is in the cloud, so it has an active edge-to-edge trade here. You got your bull cross down here, you got your entry into the cloud here, and you're just getting continuously better entries as this thing pulls back. Maybe it's more of a falling wedge even at this point. But your stop loss is between the cloud and the key, Kijun down here, yeah, between 25 cents and 30 cents. You don't want to see anything below that if you're in an active long, because then you're at risk of just falling out of everything, bear trend continuation. But where this sits now, it looks like bullish reversal to at least 50 cents from 35 even is a good trade. On the Stellar BTC weekly chart on Polo, and if you're wondering why this ticker is STR and not XLM on Polo, it's still STR. That was the original ticker. They haven't changed that yet. Probably never will. But it's in the cloud. The cloud is actually bullish here, which is bizarre. You don't really see this too much, where this doesn't look too bullish, but it's ranged for so long in this tight area, 5 to 700 sats, whatever, 5 to 900 sats, that it's burned off all this resistance, and now cloud is just flat. So into 2022, this thing may actually pull bullish as it rises above the cloud. Definitely worth watching, because that'd be the first time it'd be above the cloud since 2018. And if we look at Stellar ETH on the weekly, it's basically pushing all-time lows. To me, this doesn't look bullish enough or in despair enough to long yet to catch knives. I'd want to see a continuous bull div or something down here on RSI. It's definitely getting into the volume area, but overall it's not looking like a buy to me just yet. Lastly, I'll just mention the ETH-BTC fund and DeFi portfolio. I trade for Techme Capital on Enzyme.finance, a non-custodial portfolio management solution where you can send ETH or USDC or just watch what I'm doing. You can see everything, including AUM, performance, allocation, all the vaults and yield plays I'm making, as well as the trades in the trades tab down below. That's all I have for this one. Like, dislike, comment, share, subscribe, and happy trading.